Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another eMarketer Tech Talk, where we host amazing guests from all areas of media, ad tech, and martech. I'm Henry Powderly, VP of Content at Insider Intelligence. Today, we'll hear how to make your direct mail strategy a smarter, more integrated part of your multi-channel marketing mix. I'm joined now by our special guests from Quad. We have Kris Persons, Senior Vice President of Direct Marketing, and John Puterbaugh, Vice President, Advanced Media and Innovation. Kris and John have a great presentation for you, and afterwards we'll open it up for questions about what you've learned. So please use the chat window to submit questions for the Q&A or to communicate with your peers. Now let's get started. Kris, over to you.
Thank you so much, Henry. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I really want to thank everybody and our partners at eMarketer for providing the opportunity for having these chats. I know myself have benefited from this community quite a bit over the course of time, and hope that John and I can bring you some tidbits and anecdotes that will help you think about your marketing a little bit differently as we move forward. So I feel grateful to be a part of a group of people that are very passionate about this industry and helping your teams and your partners be better with your marketing dollars. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and that you've afforded to us. So here from Quad, or again, myself, Kris Persons, Senior Vice President at Direct Marketing, and my partner in crime here today is Dr. John Puterbaugh, who is VP of Advanced Media and Innovation. And we're here to talk to you a little bit about ways in which we've been working with our clients to help really integrate on and offline and bring greater cost efficiency and greater response and return on your marketing investment. So this is one of my favorite slides, which is as we think about clients and the ecosystem that we all work in, is I really love how complicated my marketing has become. Said no marketer ever. And the modern day marketing experience for many of us that are in this space can feel like a mired bowl of spaghetti and a little bit of a hairball. It's really complicated. It's marketing priorities and initiatives coupled with sophisticated data or sometimes unsophisticated data delivered with technology, with analytics, with the need to measure and those types of things. And pulling all that together in a way that is in synchrony and harmony to drive the best return is very, very complicated. And we all are, in that space on a regular basis and know how complicated it could be. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is we recently went to a marketing seminar, and we're sitting around the table with some senior level marketers and CMOs. And they actually, we talked about their on and offline experience and how they were able to actually leverage data. And no one wanted to talk about it initially. Everyone was averting eye contact. And they said, no one wants to talk about how hard this really is, or maybe how poorly they might be doing it. So we come in deep empathy with you and among you, knowing how complicated it can be today. We recently did some work with Forrester, where 50% of us feel that there's a waste of spend and budget in inefficient marketing strategies, complicated ecosystems, complicated technology, multiple handoffs between multiple different partners really makes it very hard to make sure that your marketing dollars are working for you in a way that drives the best, return on marketing investment. So our job together is always to make this easier. The way that you think about a campaign, the way you think about your consumer insights, the way you think about the nature of the connection you want to make with them, from creative concepting all the way through to production, whether that's an in-store sign, whether that's a package you receive in your house, an email that you send, a display ad, a direct mail piece, a catalog, all of the making that goes into the thinking that you do and the results that you're trying to drive and the connection you're trying to drive with your consumers. And then you need to deploy that across channels and within channel and across channel. And then you also have to measure it, not only within a channel, but across channels as well. So that all becomes very complicated. And one of the things that we talk about internally is removing friction out of that process as much as possible to, again, drive cost efficiency, but also be able to help you get a better return on your marketing dollar. And that's the journey we're all joined in today as we think about trying to help each other connect with our consumers. So what we wanted to share a little bit more of today is why marketers love email. We are in a period of time in the year that where most of you are thinking about your current year's return on ad spend. You're thinking about going into budgeting, and you're determining what budget should be placed in what channels or a mix of channels. So we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the underlying principles and foundational pillars of why marketers love email, why direct mail and email actually have more in common than you think as you think about modernizing and continuing to drive cost effectiveness into your marketing mix and drive growth. There's actually a lot of capability in direct mail today that makes it function more like email. So it has more in common than you think. And we like to think all channels matter, particularly at Quad when we're working with our clients. It's really not one channel over the other. If you start with an audience-first strategy, it's really about an integrated strategy across multiple channels that ultimately, at the end of time, is going to drive the reaction and the response from the consumers that you want. I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the primary research that we did, but 39% of consumers are very or extremely likely to respond to a promotion when they see it multiple channels. So our consumers are telling us that they're interested in hearing from us in multiple ways. And we always think it's a balance of both to think about how to maximize your marketing investment. So we were curious about getting to know what was on the mind of marketers. And so we did some primary research ourselves, and we'd love to be able, we shared that extensively within our organization, but also want to provide you with the opportunity to learn from that as well. So concluding this presentation, you'll be able to receive this primary research. And we learned some really interesting things. Again, 39% of consumers really react well when they receive multiple messages. We know that 68% of you are already integrating email and direct mail today. 58% are integrating social media and display with direct mail. So you guys are always already well on this journey of trying to make sure that you have a cohesive consumer journey and a series of messaging that are going to drive the best connection with your consumer. And again, at the end of the webinar, you're going to be able to receive this. So what fuels the crush on email? Email is amazing. It's an amazing channel. I find it effective personally. I've used it and leveraged it with clients. It provides a tremendous amount of stability. There's a lot of incredibly wonderful platforms that deliver tremendous automation and capability at scale in the email space. It gives the marketer control, gives the consumer control. It's affordable. You can adjust, and it's very agile. There's a high ROI associated with it, and it can be traced. That's one of the things that's so great about email is you can determine who you sent it to. You can trace the behavior within the email. You can trace what they did after the email, and it really can connect quite cohesively when you're thinking about measurement and optimization over time. So it's versatile, it's wonderful, and we really like it, and it really does connect very, very well with consumers. So what if we said that the same things were true about direct mail? One of the things that we work with a lot with clients with the rising cost of postal and really thinking about how historically effective this channel has been, really trying to optimize the cost and drive the reaction and response to direct mail is really, really important to us all as we really think about connecting in a way that's really satisfying to consumers that actually maximizes your budget. So what fuels the crush on direct mail? One of the things, again, with rising costs that we think about is how do we be more modern in thinking about the way that you're bringing your on and offline channels together. And there's three real fundamental components to the crush on direct mail that's really relevant and similar to what is relevant in email, which is the first and foremost curation and personalization. So if you think about audience-first strategies, it's all about taking everything you know about a consumer, the demographics, the attitudes, the behaviors, their intent signals, both on and offline, and marrying that together and evaluating what is the effective way in which I'm going to be able to communicate with the consumer. And that's really important and is available in direct mail just as much as it is in any other channel. And really, automation at scale is incredibly critical because to be able to deliver that message to the right person, and we all know, everybody on this call, that personalization and relevancy to the consumer really matters. And automation at scale that comes in email is incredibly, is similar to what you might think about in direct mail. And that's predicated on the idea that we can print in a way that's variable, that enables just as much of personalization, whether it's based on a segment or based on one-to-one data that you can deliver to be able to cohesively deliver personalized direct mail at scale based on creative and the components that all are underlying in delivering the same components that deliver in an email can be delivered in a direct mail piece. And John's going to talk to you a little bit more about it. And again, measurement and optimization. John's going to talk to you a little bit more about the traceability of direct mail, how that can cohesively fit and be integrated in your consumer journey. And again, how do you make sure that you're optimizing your cost and being able to deliver direct mail that's going to drive response for you and drive the return on investment overall in your marketing spend. So does that mean that my direct mail program is stuck in the 90s? I worked one time personally with an interior decorator, and she came into my room, and I said, well, what do you think about this room? And I always remember the wording that she used, which is like, she didn't make a judgment about the room. She just said, I think we could do better. So I think in our experience, there's a lot of opportunity for disruption in this space where we can be more modern and thinking about the way that we pursue direct mail and direct marketing that's predicated on some of the same fundamentals that you might use in email and in other forms of digital. Some of the things are including, again, being more deliberate about the audience. We do see some audience practices in the direct mail space that's probably a little bit dated and can be modernized based on all the availability of all the data that we have both on and offline. We see the ability to automate the way that we deliver creative. And again, with the emergence of the ability to print in a variable way, we have the ability to be more personalized and deliberate in who we mail to and why, which lowers the cost of how many mailings you actually have to send and how much you're printing, but it drives that response rate up in personalization. So one of the things that I might posit to the group of marketers that are on the call today is really think about the ways in which you can continually advance your data practice, your creative practice, and your ability to leverage personalization and direct mail to modernize the way that you're thinking about this channel and integrating it with digital. We recently worked with a marketer that is in financial services, and they found that the ability to personalize and direct mail drove response rates by 50%, and it actually over time decreased their costs because we were able to not print as much and drive effective response rates with the consumers that they were targeting by being more deliberate with the data. The cost savings from those particular campaigns can then be leveraged and test and learn within that channel and across channels to be able to, again, drive a better return on that marketing investment overall. Most marketing budgets aren't going up. We know from our primary research they're staying the same. And I know that one of the complexities in determining is what's the investment strategy you need to pursue. And so we would just posit that we can modernize direct mail to make it more effective to you. So without further delay, I'm actually going to turn it over to John, and he's going to break down each of these things in a way and get into more details with a lot of these. And John, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kris. I think we're going to break it down into these three areas that Kris kind of already hit on and made the point about the commonalities across both email and direct mail. But again, when you look at both email and direct mail, we really can leverage best practices across audience curation, automation, and measurement. As it relates to curation, we found that intent signals have proven to be critical in building audiences and determining next best actions. For automation, both electronic and printed mail can be integrated into our MarTech stacks. In the past, it was really this is really limited to email, right? Many of the tech stacks were built on email. And then finally, both direct marketing approaches, email and direct mail, provide traceable elements, as Kris mentioned, throughout the whole campaign. And the measurement of both of these forms of direct marketing can be really brought down to incremental return on spend. And so I'm going to go into each of these areas. And Kris, feel free to chime in anytime if you want to add something to this. So starting with the curation, we're going to dig in a little bit on audiences, curation, and just the process of personalization. I think it's needless to say, Kris touched on this, and our research will show this as well, is that we know that personalization works. Relevant content works. Increases conversions, it yields better customer experiences, and overall it delivers a better return on investment. So we know it works, and we've seen it in email and we've seen it in direct mail. And so the key thing is, how do you do this at scale with both of them together? One thing that really lets us build audiences is behavioral data. And it's not just building audiences, it's building audiences that perform, right? Really focusing, behavior is really about what someone did as opposed to a description of them, like demographics, such as age, income, and education. And two key types of behavioral data are where we spend our time and where we spend our money. These are important forms because they often predict what we're going to do. The other element that we really think is important at Quad is where we are and where we live. And often where we are is more important than who we are. And so you'll see these elements become really critical in building an audience that you can reach through multiple channels. Now, digging in a little deeper on the data side, I want to focus on intent signals. And intent signals are really critical at getting at behavior that's predictive and or indicative of some action. So if you look at Google, Google built a huge business that's predicated on intent. There's navigational intent, where you search for something on a map, right? You intend to go there. When you search for a product, you intend to buy it or give it. And when you search for information, you're generally interested in that area. It provides some context. In addition to these online intent signals that are typically tied to search, there's a bunch of offline intent signals that we think is important and should be brought into the direct marketing mix, such as physical events, like when something's going out for delivery to the home, a QR scan, which is a top of funnel intent signal, and then mailbox intent data, which we'll be going into a little bit more here shortly. But ultimately, leveraging these intent signals really allows us to turn interest into action, which is important. We want to be able to build audiences and act on them and get them to respond. So at Quad, we really believe that the house and where we live is a critical context to direct marketing. Households are really the place used to connect devices and people when people build identity graphs. And it's the one place where devices kind of come together and access the internet via common Wi-Fi points for a consistent period of time. And so just as like content and context are critical in building online audiences, what we subscribe to at home and what we buy and what we receive in the mail is really key to unlocking a household intent. And as an example, we have a specialty retailer we worked with, and we used the actual mailbox intent data as an additional dimension when we built out and curated a prospecting audience. When this audience was tested in market, the addition of this offline intent signal actually drove incremental sales. And so we believe there's more elements to continue to add and grow our ability to prospect. Similarly, to do personalization at scale, a lot of things have had to come together: people, processes, and technology. And if you look at things and you look at the innovation that's happened within marketing, you have now customer data platforms or CDPs, and these are replacing or building upon customer relationship management databases, CRM, where you're combining both offline and online data together in one place. And then, as Kris mentioned, the technology that's brought about digital printers now that can deliver high volume, fully variable pieces at an effective price point. And then finally, most important, is really breaking down the silos within marketing organizations. Increasingly, CMOs have had a stronger voice in making technology decisions, and they've been able to unify groups and deliver better marketing programs. And the last thing, I think, when it comes to personalization, just in case we want to get into this a little bit more, email and direct mail can both be tailored to individuals. And I know we all know this on the side of email, but sometimes it's forgotten on the side of direct mail. The same process of building templates and doing variable imaging works and can be delivered at scale. They're both data-driven and can be personalized one-to-one and so forth. So now finally, let's look at the second section, a little bit on automation. And we know that our ability to automate and scale to reach audiences is fundamental to growth in a business. However, a lot of times within direct mail, traditionally we'd send out direct mail based on like seasonal events, or the triggers were focused on life stage events, a birthday, an anniversary of when a product was purchased, or when someone moved. But now, as with email, you can take digital signals from online, like a shopping cart abandonment or time spent on site, and use that to trigger a direct mail campaign in addition to email. So this allows marketers to be more judicious in the use of direct mail and turning it into kind of an always-on behavioral-driven channel. And so we can, there's many areas here, in terms of types of triggers. We're going to focus on one that's been performing well lately. And if you look at it, when you look at online to offline remarketing, there's a lot of stuff that can be learned from email, right? Clearly, when someone visits a website, they're exhibiting interest or intent in that brand or content. However, a lot of times websites are not really conducive to converting traffic, despite our best intents, right? But we know that if we send out a direct mail piece based on someone spending time on the site or abandoning a shopping cart or other different digital signals, it's an effective way to convert warm leads. And so this form of remarketing is sometimes referred to as programmatic print, and it was really paved the way by cookie-based site remarketing with companies like Criteo and other people that have used cookies to remarket with display ads for over the past 5 or 10 years. So basically, the marriage of online intent and interest have been combined with the ability to now get mail pieces in-home rapidly. And it's a proven technique. And we found that on average, that business to consumer marketers can achieve a 3 to 5% response rate by converting these warm, anonymous web leads and being in home 3 to 5 days from when they've engaged on site. So finally, in terms of scaling, our marketing, the more we can be predictive and prescriptive, the more efficient and effective our marketing becomes. And so we believe that integrating offline and online intent signals into automated multi-channel marketing programs is really imperative to scale. So finally, in terms of measurement, we really all know that we can't improve what we can't measure. And so what we don't measure, sorry. And part of the appeal to email, as Kris mentioned, is just the ability to measure it, right? It's traceable at every step. It goes out from a client, it goes through the internet, it's filtered, it's received by people, and then it's opened or not opened, it's clicked on, it's not clicked on, it's unsubscribed, and so forth. But all those details are what's appealing and allows us to measure it and continue to optimize it. However, just again, as Kris noted, direct mail is also traceable at every step along the way. And for some reason, we forget this, right? The direct mail, when it goes out to be delivered, the USPS is actually scanning it at every touch point along the way. And so for those of you that don't subscribe to it, you can get an automated email that says and shows actually pictures of which direct mail is coming to you later today. It arrives at the destination. And then finally, we can measure all the responses, right? The QR scans, the click-throughs, and the different types of, making a phone call. These are all ways to get response from the direct mail piece. But I think the last area I want to touch on before turning it back to Kris here is really thinking about measurement. And while attribution, for example, a lot of online marketers and a lot of the walled gardens are appealing to people to use multi-touch attribution, we believe ultimately that attribution is really a fool's errand. And we don't mean this in any disrespectful case. We all want to be able to assign value to each tactic, to each channel, and each touch point. But it's really not adequate to do multi-touch attribution within individual walled gardens because it really doesn't account for offline and other forms of traditional media. And so when it comes to multi-channel campaigns that are both offline and online, incrementality is the only game in town. And all marketers ultimately understand and leverage best practices as it relates to this, right? We all know how to do holdouts, A/B tests to get at lift over control. And this, of course, is measuring incrementality. And then when it comes to more complex multi-channel events, incrementality can be measured using all sorts of media mix modeling, such as tactical media mix modeling, where you can take in daily impressions across different channels and tactics and really build out a full decomposition and understand the synergies between the different channels. So I think for now, I'm going to turn it back to Kris and let us wrap up on these topics.
So John, thank you so much. Part of the thing that we felt was so important, particularly given where we are at in the calendar year, is again, many of you are going into the back half of the year really thinking about your marketing budgets. Most budgets are not necessarily growing. You're having to shift and really think about how do you place the most important, where are you going to put your dollars in your investment portfolio to get the best reaction or the best response and return on your marketing spend. And so the things that we're thinking about and what we're reacting to is oftentimes, particularly in direct mail, what we see is there's kind of a knee-jerk reaction in the marketplace often where volume gets cut out, but then so does response. And I think what we want to be thinking about with you all is ways in which we can help each other and help our the marketing partners that we work with really think about how to leverage that marketing dollar in a way that's going to continue to drive growth and response in your business while optimizing costs at the same time. And by leveraging the best practices that we've been taught from the digital world, we can incorporate those things in the offline world to make sure that you have a cohesive consumer journey that you can see, you can trace, and ultimately identify, what your consumers are reacting to. So, John kind of mentioned this, but modern intent signals aren't just for email or for digital. That data asset around what a consumer is really looking at and what they're actually searching on and how they're actually behaving is important to incorporate into all of your channels, including your offline channels. And it provides an incredibly rich, value exchange when you can be relevant to your consumers in ways that are that they've indicated to you that they're interested in. Direct mail capabilities belong in your MarTech stack as we continue to advance with integration with APIs and other things. When you're working on an orchestrated omni-channel experience, there is an ability to deliver offline experiences integrated cohesively with your other channels, including email. We do test and learn with clients on this all the time. We take low responders in one channel, we test in another channel and see what the integrated whole looks like to, again, continue to optimize the dollars that you have to drive the best response and growth into your business. I mentioned this already, and so did John. Direct mail is actually very traceable. One of the benefits that Quad has is we're all vertically integrated in our enterprise. So we have the technology capability to give you insight into all those traceable points that you can leverage when you're thinking about planning a campaign, when those touch points are integrated, how to get in home faster, when things got in home, and those types of things. And then when it comes to email, direct mail, it's not, again, either or. We hear a lot of banter about this in the marketplace. I think we want to take a pretty firm stance to say it really is about optimizing your marketing dollars across both on and offline channels. And in some instances, we print things at Quad, and we would tell you that you should be probably printing less. We also know that we have the ability to then help you optimize in other channels. So we really think it's about the best return on your marketing investment, and that we should be thinking together about test and learn strategies across your calendar to continue to drive the most effective use of your marketing dollars. And again, as John mentioned, attribution is very complicated and tricky, and it sometimes can be a little bit obfuscated in terms of what it is your consumers are trying to accomplish and what actually impacted their journey with you. So our focus with a lot of our clients is really doing a little bit more deliberate measurement on incrementality to make sure, again, that you're really driving the growth out of your marketing dollars and can really attribute that very directly to the marketing sequences that you put in place in front of a consumer. So with that, it's a wrap. And I would just ask if, John, you have any other observations or anecdotes you would want to share at this point.
No, I think you've hit it. You've hit them great. It's so I think we should open it up to questions here and let Henry roll.
Awesome. Well, Kris, John, great presentation. Really good insights. Thank you for sharing them. It's really interesting to see how effective direct mail can be. And I did love that final takeaway. Intent signals aren't just for email. I think it's something really to think about. We do have quite a few questions, so I'm going to jump right in. The first question, maybe John, you want to take this one. Are QR code scans a comparable metric to click-through rates?
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, a QR scan actually is a type of click-through, right? And so when you think about going from offline to online, when you pull out your phone to scan it, it's really like clicking on a link. But what's interesting, just to elaborate for half a second, is after you've clicked, what the QR code does is yield a high conversion rate, right? If you want to drive an app download or a form fill or a coupon redemption. And so since it takes a lot of effort, it's a top of funnel intent signal. When you get out your phone to scan a QR code, it really has higher conversion rates than, let's say, programmatic display ads or paid social. And just to give a quick example of that, we did a campaign for a retailer where we had it that 80% of the people that scanned actually responded and gave their email address. So oftentimes, if you ran a campaign and did that with digital ads, you'd get more like a 15 to 20% conversion rate at the high end.
Excellent. Next question goes back to data. What customer data do you need to integrate direct mail with email? Kris, maybe you want to take that?
Yeah, I can take that. It really very much depends on the nature of the campaign that you're trying to put in place. And we also deal with our experience as marketers have a variety of, sophistication or on a spectrum of maturity level as it relates to how they, the nature of the data that they have. So it really can be as rudimentary in some cases as segmentation data. It can be as sophisticated as aggregating a complicated ecosystem of audience data that includes intent, that includes behaviors, where your analytics or decision scientist team is building segmentation based off a much more sophisticated data set. What's really fascinating is if you actually look at it on a press or plant floor, once that data exchange or that data file is integrated, you can integrate direct mail personalization at scale, very similar to what goes out in display. So it can be as sophisticated or not sophisticated as the marketer intends. And we see a variety of different sorts. In the example that I shared earlier on, where we were working in financial services, because of compliance and privacy and some other considerations, they were at the beginning stages of really just trying to segment. And once they put segmentation in place and we looked at some of those underlying audience components, they saw the efficacy of that. So they were, I would say, at the early stages of leveraging, personalization at scale for direct marketing. We have others, particularly that are digitally native, that are maybe a little bit more advanced or have sophisticated, digital spend that we'd be able to advance and consider that specifically for those marketers who have more complicated data sets. John, would you add anything there?
The only thing to add to that is I think we're seeing a lot of both CPGs and obviously direct-to-consumer brands that don't have traditional, direct customer data because they've been working through distribution with retailers or they're a brand new upstart. And so what's exciting is there are a lot of data sources. So I think the key thing is to get the right measurement vehicles in place to build the right audiences, test them, and continue to iterate. And so this can work with sophisticated marketers that have multiple co-ops and so forth, all the way down to people that are starting from scratch. So I think the exciting thing is there's such a range of data available to get started quickly and then set a baseline and then drive incremental improvements from there.
If I can just add too, I think there's such an emergence around zero-party data and the big ability to acquire data from consumers. As John said, if someone scans a QR code, they're more than likely interested in giving you an email. And there's a lot of sophisticated things that you can do once you have someone opting in and leaning into your brand in that regard. So when you think about being able to then look and plan your consumer journey mapping or any communications mapping that you're doing, you now understand that consumer in that journey opted in with you. So not only is it, can we leverage a variety of different data sets to activate against it, we also leverage direct mail to actually add to that, because that intent signal that John's describing with the QR code is an important part of the zero-party data acquisition strategy that a lot of marketers want to pursue.
That's a great segue, because we have another question from the audience asking for some more specificity on how you really are collecting those intent signals from direct mail.
Do you want to take that, John?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, when you run a campaign, the post office has what's called an intelligent barcode on everything, right? And that's scanned, so you know when that arrives in home. And that in of itself isn't a consumer intent, but it allows you to understand when interactions can start. Because a lot of times with direct mail, 20% of the time people go to the brand's website, but 80% of the time they're searching. So that allows you to really understand the direct mail is really driving search intent. And then, of course, when a QR scan, that's a direct and immediate. That's an offline to online intent. You're interested. There's a call to action on the direct mail piece. You scan it. And so that's another intent signal. And then since Quad's one of the largest mailers of the USPS, we see what else is coming into the mailbox. And so we collaborate with our customers and partners to build a full picture, a 360-degree picture of the household and what kind of mail is coming in. So those are types of offline intent signals. And then, of course, we can marry them with the online intent signals that we've discussed before.
Excellent. What about frequency? One of our audience members asked about the cadence. Is there a most effective cadence for direct mail?
Well, again, I think we're seeing, I'll start, Kris, and you can jump in. I think what we're seeing is traditional marketing budgets are moving to having a certain amount of spend be reactive and responsive to people's behavior. And so therefore you can, if you're measuring incrementality and you are remarketing based on people that are raising their hands, showing interest and showing intent and measuring to them, you then can allocate the budget accordingly. And then to this question around frequency, when someone's interested, depending on your purchase, your consideration, time frame, right size of purchase, you either have to be in home that minute, that day, via email, 3 to 5 days with direct mail, or if it's a longer consideration, building a more staged, frequent, you'll see like in insurance and financial services, it's weekly touches on direct mail, it's every other day on email. You build up the different cadences, and so I think it's a function of the lifetime value of your customers and the type of purchases they're making really determine frequency. But then also, I think the major change is direct mail has really moved from this idea of a monthly drop or a seasonal drop to a more complicated hybrid that matches your other forms of digital marketing, right? That's more reactive and responsive. Kris, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I mean, I think it's, what we think about is connections planning when we think about cadence. So using data and really thinking about what are the connections that what do we believe to be a cohesive consumer experience, depending on their purchase journey, whether you're trying to acquire, retain, engage, whatever your certain objectives are, and really determining what is the sequence of experiences we think that consumer, will that consumer react to, and then you're testing and learning in those things. And I think it does depend on the purchase cycle, depends on the seasonality. It depends on the value of the purchase. Things that are high value are less frequent than others. So it really does depend on the business quite a bit. But I think that one of the things that John is hitting on is it can be as reactive and imminent, or as long in cycle as it kind of needs to be based on where the consumer is at. So if we needed to get in home within a few days, it might be something digital. Within a week, we could probably do something like a postcard if you're remarketing and those types of things. So I think that direct mail is becoming every bit of responsive, if you will, to what the cycle needs to be, depending on what the nature of the business is and what vertical it's in.
And then one last thing to add to that, Kris, is, the co-ops used to kind of be the source of a lot of data for direct mail. However, frequency and high transactional data is not predictive when it comes to a lot of special interest purchases and stuff. And that's where a lot of these offline intent signals, right? Someone that's subscribing to a specialized woodworking magazine or Modern Ferret magazine, one of Kris's favorites, those are important signals that you can't get from a traditional co-op. And so we think the leveraging intent signals is really important, and that'll drive frequency, obviously.
I was going to talk about your desire to test different anti-aging creams. And so sometimes you like it in direct mail versus digital as you're trying out different products, John. Sorry.
Thank you.
So we've got a really specific question that came in about B2B, and maybe you can help this person out. The question is, for B2B, we would like to reach out to customers with direct mail, but the concern is we only have office addresses, and many of our customers now work from home. Can you advise any kind of strategy to deal with this, or then perhaps acquire home addresses?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of strategies here. I'll name a couple. Kris can name a couple. There's a lot of, I'll just call, for lack of a better word, horse trading. If you have some information like a work email address, you can find other email addresses like personal email addresses. We can also capture, we think, as I mentioned beforehand, online web signals. So you can put first-party data pixels on the website, and when people access them, we'll know whether they're at home or work. I mean, works and businesses are very easy to understand, and there's very sophisticated databases. They have stable IP addresses. They have certain consistency. So you can really do a lot. And we absolutely believe that B2B marketers should start really testing into this hybrid marketing, that people are making decisions at home. And right now, I know most organizations, if you are not careful about how you communicate with people via their work addresses, communications will disappear. And so you really need to think about that work from home environment. It's a good question. And I know, Kris, I don't know what else you want to add to it. There's a lot of other parameters you can do to pull data.
I was just thinking of also geo-targeting, depending on the geographical location of the company and who they're targeting and things like that. There may be some things that we can do in that regard.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. If I might, there's one other model that I think is really interesting, which is kind of like a franchise model or insurance company and agent model. We do a lot of that work too, where we're really trying to make sure that companies, big insurance companies, can make their agents successful in the marketplace, and helping them personalize their connection with consumers is a really important model in that framework, to how to, make sure that the company is providing all the tools and capabilities for their agents or their branch offices to be successful, or their franchises to be successful in certain local markets. So local marketing, I think, is a really important point in that space.
Excellent. We have time for a couple more questions. So let's go to data privacy, because that's a very important topic. Are data privacy restrictions affecting what marketers can do with direct mail?
I think one of the things that we know in direct mail is, to a large extent, the ability to household gives us some permission to mail directly to the house. And I think that clients are often communicating, in primary research that tells us that they're willing to give up information in order to get more personalized ads, more deliberate communication, and those types of things. So we take data privacy very seriously, but I think that there's a lot of opportunity where consumers are opting in to receive more information that's pertinent and relative to them based on marketers that are important to them. John, is there anything else you would add to that?
I would just reiterate, and it's really a value exchange. What value are you offering the customer, and in return, what will they give you permission to do? And I think as long as organizations are transparent with how they're using data and how they're communicating, you set yourself up to succeed. And then, as Kris mentioned before, start to build zero-party data capture strategies about how do you get customers to willingly give you information by engaging them and being authentic with them and asking them questions.
That's great advice. So we have time for one more question, and I think this is a good one to end on because it's such a hot topic and it's something you touched on a lot, and maybe we can just kind of go a little deeper on it, and that's incrementality. How do you measure incrementality, and what sort of things do you measure?
I'm going to let you take that. Yeah.
All right, thanks. So if you think about it, like at the most basic level, basically for decades, direct marketers have been measuring incrementality via lift over control. You basically divide your audience into a holdout group and a control group, and then you measure the ones you kind of contacted, how many of them bought and how many in your control group bought. And so we know we didn't send stuff to your holdout group. And if they bought stuff, you can then compare the two and you get basically an incrementality or an incremental spend. But what gets exciting, I think, is when you get a complex multi-channel campaign, you can start to use regression and other techniques to kind of decompose all the different signals. And I think where that becomes valuable to a business is if you start to use these more sophisticated techniques, you can really break out what are the things that are driving sales and what are the inhibitors of sales, right? There's a lot of things like a brand value, competitive pressures, natural disasters, PR issues. Those are all working independent of our marketing. And so we really want to look at what are the things when we do as direct marketers that is a quick, kind of stimuli that we get a response to. And if we can pull those together, we know what's working and what's not. And I think using these kind of techniques, you can build upon the something that we've all done, right? The lift over control aspects, and get more sophisticated to understand the synergies between print and digital, and whether print is incremental to digital and vice versa, and what are their interactions. And so it's exciting because we live in a time of really fantastic tools and rich access to data. And so I think our ability now to measure incrementality in complex multi-channel environments is really exciting, and it's a great tool and tactic for marketers.
All right, great answer, great presentation, lots of great questions today. So thank you both, Kris and John, for sharing all these insights. It was great having you, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the time. Thanks for providing the forum.
Of course. So before we wrap up, let me take a moment to tell you what's happening across eMarketer's media channels. You can register for upcoming live analyst and tech talk webinars at emarketer.com/webinars. On the audio side, don't forget to tune into Behind the Numbers, eMarketer's daily podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And finally, please subscribe to our newsletters. Keep an eye on your email for the link to today's recording and the slides. And again, thank you all for your time. Thanks to Kris, John, and the whole team at Quad, and to our Studio II crew, our production team behind the scenes, for making this webinar possible. We'll see you on the next Tech Talk.